how we can become the people of vision. So the first fact is that people of vision encounter problems. So if you ever encounter problem, don't get troubled. Maybe you are a person of vision. Maybe you have a vision. That's why all the problems come on your shoulders. Because those problems coming, God knows you can bear them. They can fit on your shoulders. So the example of Nehemiah, he lived in the kingdom of Babylon as a cupbearer. I don't know if you know this concept, cupbearer. It was a good job. It was a good job in the kingdom. So he was living a life of peace, a life of prosperity, a life of political power. Someone who is always beside the king Nebuchadnezzar. He was a very powerful king. What was his job? His job was to test all the king's food before the king can get into the table. Testing every kind of food that was given to the king. So making sure that the king is safe. Making sure that the king is healthy. Making sure that the king does not eat a poisoned food. A food that has been poisoned by his enemies. Isn't it a good job? So Nehemiah would have been one of the most trusted person in the kingdom. Imagine someone who has been appointed to test the food of the king before the food is given to the king. Very trustworthy person. So, in short, he was living a life of great serenity and great ease. But the thing is, he did not remain in that state of life all the time because he was a great vision. The problems, the calamity, the compassion, everything were meeting into his life. For example, the peace he was living and the serenity he was living were shattered by a visit from his brother. One of his brothers came from Israel, from Jerusalem, just bringing the news to Nehemiah. He brought news that the people of Israel were being afflicted by their enemies and that the city of Jerusalem was completely devastated and destroyed. Imagine hearing such news from that kind of comfort. So Nehemiah was very devastated, heartbroken. So I find it amazing how life can be, in 1 minute perfect, in the next minute, everything falling apart into pieces. Life is like that. And as soon as Nehemiah hears this awful news, he was very devastated and his heart was broken. And he could not enjoy anymore his peace and serenity, his enjoyable life in the kingdom of Babylon. And he immediately enters a time of fasting, a time of weeping, a time of prayer before the Lord. It was an engaging time. No longer enjoying the life beside the king Nebuchadnezzar, but it's time now to engage with things happening in his country. Instead of enjoying his position and the act of tasting food all the time, the life was shattered. And he was brought into knees. Was brought into constant prayer. This is a personal vision. When problems come, you know what to do. You don't just cry and cry. You know that we should go into knees. So this is how God trains the people of vision. This is how God forms the people of vision. If you are the person of vision, this is how you have been prepared. So when God calls you in a certain way, do not hesitate, brothers and sisters. When he calls you to do this and that, in a certain way, it might not be the way he called Nehemiah, but just follow. Just follow him and go with him to wherever he calls you to. God has a great plan for you, and that's why he's calling you. He has a great plan for you, and nothing is greater than being allowed to be a part of that God's plan. Nothing is greater than, and nothing is more beautiful than that. So the second fact is that people of vision exercise prayer. They exercise prayer. So the people of vision involve into prayer. There is no other way around. Nehemiah begins by exalting the Lord. He praises God for his superiority. God is superior, way superior to anything else in the world, in the universe. God is bigger than this problem happening, this destruction of Israel. God is bigger than that. He praises God for his strength. He praises God for his sovereignty. He knows that even the king Nebuchadnezzar is inferior to God. He praises God for his sacredness. He praises God for his sincerity. This is how he understood God. And that's why when he encounters all these problems, when he gets the news from one of his brothers, this is how he got into prayer, because he knows God. God is more than anything else in this universe. He praises God for who he is. He is God, and nothing else is above God. This is the kind of lesson we can all learn if you intend to be a person of vision. These are the ways. You know, after all, this is how even Jesus Christ himself taught his disciple how to pray. He said like this: "This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name." Praises. So if you read very carefully, Nehemiah did not just jump immediately to say, "God, please help me rebuild the city of Jerusalem and help me restore my country." Not that way. So he prayed day and night. He got before the Lord and prayed until he got the answer. Do not give up. Do not give up on what you want. If you make sure, if you really know that this is the will of God. So I think such a kind of a prayer of Nehemiah is an example that if we intend to be the people of vision, this is a kind of a prayer, a kind of example that we can follow. He teaches us how to come before the Lord in prayer. If you read it very carefully, it's very systematic. It's very beautiful. Then you can know how to go before God and ask whatever you want. So the next fact is that people of vision embrace the providence. You know, everything has been given for a purpose. People of vision embrace providence, the providence of God. There is nothing that happens by accident. It's all the providence of God. And he knows the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem and the restoration of the Israel is by providence of God. It's not something that he can do by himself. If he knows that if this is not part of the will of God, this will not be done. It's the providence of God. So if you see on verse 11, it seems that Nehemiah felt the weight of this assignment.